Hi, everyone. This is Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach of Defend and Publish. And this is episode 62, Reasons for Source Support. I've been thinking a lot about sources because this is spring of 2022 and we are running a literature review writing group in March. Details will be in the show notes if you're interested in joining. And it occurred to me that one of the reasons why our clients are struggling with literature reviews is because sources do different things. So while you're reviewing your literature, there's different reasons why you're choosing different sources, and functions of sources tend to be they're varied. There's lots of different reasons you might use a source in either your article literature review or a chapter in a dissertation where you're doing the literature. So I thought what we do is just kind of comb through some reasons why a certain source might be in your article or whatever writing project you're working on. So one of the reasons might be that the source is serving as background information. So if you're talking about, for example, a theory, maybe you want to provide some background on that theory. Maybe if you're doing a history project, you're going to provide some historical context and you're going to use some sources as background in that way. Maybe if you're going to walk us through a paper in biomedicine and you're going to talk to us about the trajectory of a new medication, you'll provide some sources that talk about different things from that point if we do a historical trajectory. So whatever sources you're using are in there for background. There's other reasons why you might use a source. Another one might be to establish a problem. So this is not necessarily the same function as having a source that gives you background information, because background information, even though we know as scholars, background is not neutral, those sources are not neutral, what you're using those for is just to set the stage for a project. For establishing a problem, yes, you're still setting the stage to some extent, but you're also making an implicit argument that a problem exists, and you're using those sources to back you up. So for example, in my research, which is on faculty writing and productivity, as I've talked about many times, one of the things that I will have a source do is set up the idea that faculty writers don't often talk to each other about their writing. So it's something, very secretive we do behind closed doors. And actually one of the reasons why this podcast is out there, to expose some ways that faculty are doing writing. So that a type of source I might be looking for is one that basically shows that the problem is existing. And so why you might want that source is to show where is the gap in the scholarship or in the research, or where is a problem that your research might solve. So that would be a second one. So a first reason for a source would be establishing some background. A second one might be setting up a problem, or a source that proves, if we want to say that a problem exists. Another thing that you might use a source for would be support for your position. So maybe there have been a couple of studies that back up what you're arguing, and maybe lots of people have backed up what you are arguing. You might use sources in parentheticals, in quotes, in paraphrases to back up your own position. And lots of scholars will do this. So let's take the example of the literature review chapter in a dissertation. One of the functions of that chapter as a whole is to set up that there is information about the problem that you're studying. There is background, there's problems, there's sources that support, there are sources that disagree. You're doing all of those things in a literature review all at once. But one of the things that literature review has to do, whether it's a paragraph in an article or a chapter in a dissertation, it has to show that there is some support for your position in some way. It might be in a different discipline. It might be in a different body of research that shows, it might extend to your particular subject, but usually you want some kind of source support for your point. Many of us are not pioneers in our research areas where we have discovered the very first thing. So sometimes it's helpful to have those sources of support. That might be another function, your sources in there. You might also want that source that disagrees, as I just mentioned. So why you might want to point those sources out, and this is for graduate students out there, sometimes you don't want to go to those sources because they might be proving or showing a hole in your own argument. You might think, well, I don't want to put out sources that disagree with me. But in general, it's a good move to make as a scholar to recognize that there are counter positions. And maybe those positions are arguments that you're actively working against, and you want to talk about those in your article in some way. So for example, if we think about maybe someone is using a source, or one of the sources is a source of disagreement with what you're currently working on, that source could go anywhere in your project. You might use it in the beginning to kind of set up that your article is disagreeing with this particular position, and that's the stand-in source for that position. It might be in the literature review to just say that there's been a robust debate about how to solve the particular thing you're working on in your article. So having a source of disagreement is another one that you might have in there. Another thing that you could do with sources is maybe you just use these to set up the idea that a conversation is happening about your topic. So this is not the same as establishing background or establishing that a problem exists, but it could be that there are just a lot of sources about this particular topic. So a very long time ago, when I was a writing program administrator at my college, I had to work out how to transition student portfolios from print to electronic portfolios. And this was a very long time ago. But one of the things that I had to do when I was making some rationales and some justifications for this, and I actually wrote about it in my own scholarship, but one of the things I had to do was just to show that people are talking about how to do this. We are talking about what to do when we no longer can store thousands of print portfolios. What can we do with electronic portfolios? So that might be another function that a source is serving in your paper. So we've really walked through 5, right? We've walked through establishing background, setting up a problem, setting up sources that agree with you, setting up sources that disagree with you, and then setting up sources that are just out there to say other people are talking about this. So this is an issue of discussion. And all of those functions are not the same thing. So as you're looking at using sources in your paper, if you're sort of stuck as to what to do when you're writing, one good thing to do is to look at your citations that are in there and think about, why is this source here? What is it doing? What is the function that it is doing in this paper for me? There's lots of other functions that sources can serve, but those 5 tend to be the primary ones. And this would be a good way to check as you're using sources that you're using them in a way that makes sense to your reader. Because sometimes just having a string of parentheticals and a citation doesn't really tell the reader, oh, I should look at this if I want background information, if I want to see a supporting study. Citing sources is one of the things that we're also doing as markers to our readers that we've done the scholarship, and allowing a path for those same readers to go and find some research on their own. So also you're being a helpful writer by making it very clear what the purpose of that source is in your essay or your chapter. So hopefully this writing advice helps this week. If you're at all interested, it's not too late to join us for our March literature writing group. It's already underway at the point of this podcast being released, but you're welcome to join us. If you're interested, you can reach out to me at Christine@defendandpublish.com. We'd love to see you in the group. Happy writing.